The final bell rang, echoing through the hallways like a starting gun for freedom. Students spilled from classrooms in a tide of voices and laughter, eager to shake off the weight of another day. Among them, Sora, Kaori, Viridia, and Valel moved through the crowd with practiced ease, drawing curious looks and greetings as they passed. It had become a common thing, eyes following them. Whispers followed too, sometimes in admiration, other times just out of curiosity. Sora's quick energy control during drills, Kaori's healing talent, Viridia's disciplined swordsmanship, and Valel's quiet intellect had earned them an odd sort of celebrity status in their division. It wasn't something they chased, but it clung to them anyway. Kaori adjusted her satchel and reached into it, pulling out a neatly folded list with a look of victory. "I grabbed the shopping list while Jing wasn't looking," she said proudly, showing it to Viridia as they walked. Viridia raised an eyebrow, amused. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" "He always forgets something," Kaori replied with a smile. "Besides, it's on the way. Come with me?" Viridia gave a small shrug, her mouth twitching with a grin. Sure, could use the walk. Sora, who had been dragging his feet a bit behind them, suddenly perked up. "You two have fun with your domestic adventure. Valel and I are going somewhere with a bit more excitement." Valel blinked as Sora threw an arm around his shoulders. "We are?" "We are now," Sora grinned. "Come on, you've been glued to books all week. Time for something fun." Valel gave a resigned sigh but didn't resist as Sora led him off in the opposite direction. Kaori watched them go, shaking her head. He better not get him into trouble again. Viridia smirked. "You say that like it's not inevitable." They turned the corner, headed toward the market with the easy rhythm of a pair used to watching each other's backs. The city buzzed with after-school energy as Kaori and Viridia walked side by side through the neighborhood streets. The sun hung lower now, casting long shadows and bathing everything in a warm, late-afternoon glow. A soft breeze tugged at the edges of Kaori's skirt while Viridia casually kicked a small pebble along the sidewalk. The market wasn't far, just a few blocks from the school, nestled between a laundromat and a corner cafe that always smelled like cinnamon and strong coffee. Kaori folded the list back into her satchel, humming to herself as they approached the sliding doors. Inside, the store was just busy enough to feel alive without being overwhelming. Familiar clerks nodded in greeting, and Kaori gave a polite wave in return. "All right, we'll start with produce," she said with quiet confidence, steering their path. "We need green onions, tomatoes, and—" Oh, he wrote the good rice again. Viridia peered over her shoulder. "What does that even mean? The expensive one?" "Probably. He likes the one in the white bag with the red label." "You mean the one that costs more than everything else combined?" Viridia grabbed a shopping basket and followed. "Why not?" Kaori smiled, but didn't argue. She moved with purpose, checking dates, examining vegetables with practiced eyes. Viridia mostly hovered, tossing in an occasional item. First a bag of dried fruit, then a box of crackers Kaori hadn't noticed. "Are you adding stuff again?" Kaori asked without looking up. "Hey, we train hard. We burn a lot of energy. Jing's going to notice." Viridia shrugged. "Let him. He eats the snacks too." They passed the drink aisle and Viridia slipped a canned coffee into the basket. "For Jing," she said. "That one he probably will appreciate," Kaori admitted. They continued through the store, their conversation drifting between idle chatter and silent coordination. Kaori double-checking the list while Viridia scanned shelves for her favorites. There was a comfortable rhythm to it, the kind that only came with years of living under the same roof, sharing the same routines. By the time they reached the checkout, the basket was heavier than planned. Kaori handed over the folded bills she'd taken from the kitchen counter that morning. Jing's careful handwriting on the note attached. "Use this if you absolutely must. No extras." Viridia didn't mention the irony as the cashier rang up her extras. Outside, the breeze had cooled a little and the sun had dipped just enough to give the streets a soft amber hue. The two girls walked side by side again, bags in hand, the grocery run a quiet success. "You think they're home already?" Kaori asked as they crossed the street. "If they are, they probably didn't bring anything useful back," Viridia replied. "Hopefully they didn't burn the place down." Kaori laughed. I left the stove off, so they can't. That won't stop Sora. Kaori grinned and nodded in agreement. You're probably right. They continued down the familiar path toward home, the clink of bag handles and the fading city noise around them a gentle backdrop to the easy bond they shared. They were just a block from home when it happened. Kaori and Viridia were walking past the park near the corner when a group of older teens, clearly from another school based on their uniforms, stepped off the curb and intercepted them. There were 3 of them, all tall, all trying a little too hard to look relaxed. The one in front had his hands in his pockets and a grin that he probably thought was charming. "Hey," he said, eyes flicking between the 2 girls. "Didn't expect to see a couple of cute first years around here." Kaori's steps slowed, a polite but cautious smile forming on her face. "We're not first years," she said gently, sidestepping. The guy moved to match their pace. "Even better. You 2 from Arkvale? Must be. Haven't seen you before." Viridia didn't bother hiding the irritation in her voice. "Keep walking, Kaori." Don't be like that," the second boy chimed in, elbowing the first. "We're just trying to be friendly." Kaori held the grocery bags a little tighter. "Thank you, but we're heading home. Have a good day." "Oh, come on, don't go yet. Let's talk a bit. We're good company." The third one stepped in closer, and that's when Viridia turned fully, her voice like frost. "Back off." The tone made all 3 hesitate, but only for a moment. "You got some fire," the first one said with a smirk. "That's sword talk, or is there a problem here?" The new voice cut clean through the moment like a blade. All 3 boys turned to see Sora and Valel approaching from down the block, Sora's usual grin gone, replaced with a sharp edge in his eyes. Valel said nothing, but the way he stood, unreadable and calm, only made the silence more uncomfortable. The lead guy tried to recover, puffing his chest a bit. "Relax, man. We're just talking." Sora didn't stop walking. "Yeah? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're bothering my sisters." Viridia crossed her arms. "They were." Kaori gave a small nod. "It's all right now." Sora reached them, standing shoulder to shoulder with Viridia. He wasn't much taller than the older teens, but there was something about his stance, casual but sure, energy humming just under the surface, that made them hesitate. Valel simply stood beside Kaori, his gaze calm and steady. He didn't need to say anything. The tension broke. The 3 boys muttered something under their breath and started to backpedal. "Whatever, man. Not worth it." They turned and walked off, quickening their pace once they were out of sight. Sora waited until they were gone, then turned to the girls. "You good?" "Fine," Viridia said. "They were annoying." Kaori exhaled softly. "Thanks for showing up when you did." Sora grinned again, this time for real. "Perfect timing's kind of my thing." Valel just adjusted the bag Kaori handed him. "Let's get home." The 4 of them fell into step together, the moment behind them already fading, but not forgotten. Kaori looked over at Sora and gave a quiet smile of gratitude, and Viridia rolled her eyes like she hadn't needed help at all, but didn't argue either. It wasn't a big deal, but it was good to know someone always had their back. The front door creaked open as the 4 stepped inside, grocery bags in hand and shoes thudding lightly against the wood floor. The house was quiet, too quiet. No scent of tea brewing, no sound of footsteps, no low hum of Jing muttering to himself as he wrote something down with his ever-present pen and paper. "That's weird," Sora muttered, kicking off his shoes. "He's usually home by now." Kaori's eyes were already scanning the room, brows furrowing. Maybe he went out for a minute? Then they saw it. Propped neatly on the living room table was one of the house's hollow screens, unfolded and set upright. Stuck to the corner of the screen was a note, handwritten in Jing's sharp, slanted print. "Play me." Valel stepped forward, set his bag down, and tapped the screen. The display flickered to life. A moment later, Jing appeared on the screen, standing outside somewhere with trees in the background and sunlight casting dappled shadows across his shoulders. His arms were crossed and his expression was calm, if a bit serious. "Hey." His voice came through the speakers, clear and steady. "If you're seeing this, I had to leave for a job. Shouldn't take longer than a day. Just an in-and-out type thing. He glanced off to the side briefly, like he'd heard something, then looked back at the camera. Evie's still out, so until she gets home, Kaori's in charge. There was a faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, the closest thing to a smile. Thanks for grabbing the groceries, by the way. I noticed the list went missing. You're lucky I trust you. Kaori flushed slightly, but her smile was proud. I'll be back sometime tomorrow, Jing went on. Try not to burn the house down. Sora, that means you. Viridia, don't duel anyone inside the walls. Valel, remind the others to sleep at a reasonable time. There was a long pause, and his expression softened just a little. You've all got this. Later. The screen flickered again and went dark. They stood there in silence for a moment, the echo of Jing's words lingering in the air. Sora stretched, flopping onto the couch. Well, guess that makes Kaori our temporary commander-in-chief. Viridia smirked. She was already acting like it. Kaori placed her hands on her hips. Just try not to make me regret taking the list. Valel tilted his head. So, what's for dinner? Kaori took the grocery bags from Viridia's hands and walked into the kitchen, her movements graceful and practiced. The others followed, kicking their shoes off and setting their bags down, filling the quiet house with the usual warmth of their presence. As Kaori began to put things away in the cabinets, Viridia leaned against the counter, arms folded, and cast a glance around the kitchen. So, what do you think Jing actually does for work? She asked, her tone casual but curious. The question hung in the air for a moment. The rest of the kids froze in place, all of them pausing their movements to consider it. Jing's job was something they'd all thought about, but never really discussed. Sora, ever quick to entertain an idea, grinned mischievously. I bet he's a secret agent, you know, like those guys who go around saving the world in suits and fighting bad guys. Maybe he works for a secret organization and does crazy spy stuff on the side. Valel, who had just opened the fridge and was taking out some juice, didn't even look up. I think he works in some sort of high-risk job like a bodyguard or something. He definitely has the whole mysterious vibe. You've seen the way he carries himself. It's like he's always ready for something to go wrong. Viridia smirked, leaning against the counter. Well, maybe he's a bounty hunter, chasing down criminals and collecting rewards, running through the city, always on the move. Probably has a fancy code name too. Kaori smiled at the thought of Jing in a suit, fighting bad guys or chasing criminals through the city. I think he's more of a problem solver, like a really skilled negotiator who fixes things that others can't. Maybe he's involved with big business deals, handling conflicts and helping people get what they want. He has that serious but calm air, you know? The four of them stood there for a moment, imagining their various scenarios, each more outlandish than the last. It was almost easy to picture Jing in each of their ideas. A suave secret agent, a dangerous bodyguard, a mysterious bounty hunter, or a high-powered negotiator. But the truth, as far as they knew, was much simpler and more complicated than any of their imaginations could come up with. Whatever he does, Sora said, dropping onto a stool at the counter, it's gotta be pretty cool. He never really talks about it, does he? Nope, Kaori replied, stacking cans on the pantry shelf. He likes to keep it private, but I guess that's part of who he is. He's always kind of elusive. But we're his family now. That has to count for something. The others nodded in agreement, even if they still didn't know the full truth. Viridia shrugged, walking over to the table. I guess we'll just have to keep guessing. Sora gave her a grin. Yeah, but it's fun to imagine. Maybe one day we'll get to see the real deal. Maybe, Kaori said, her smile softening as she placed a few more groceries in the fridge. But for now, we just do what we can. We've got each other. And just like that, their thoughts drifted from Jing's mysterious job back to their own daily routines. The house, though empty of Jing for the moment, was still a place of laughter, planning, and the quiet moments they shared. The kitchen was filled with the hum of activity as Kaori moved deftly between the stove and countertop, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. Valel was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of boiling water for pasta, and Viridia was setting the table, muttering to herself about getting everything perfect. Sora, of course, was lounging nearby, slouched on one of the kitchen chairs, his feet propped up on another. "Come on, Sora, help me out here," Viridia said, throwing him a pointed look as she organized the plates on the table. "I'm supervising," he said with a lazy grin, not moving an inch. Viridia rolled her eyes, but she didn't press further. Instead, she continued her task, while Kaori continued to prepare dinner with a soft smile, the warm, familiar routine of cooking calming her. The front door creaked open, followed by the unmistakable sound of Evie's cheerful voice. "I'm home!" Kari turned with a soft smile as Evie stepped into the kitchen, her presence immediately filling the space. Evie tossed her bag on the counter and gave Kari a quick hug. "Smells wonderful in here. What's cooking?" Kaori glanced at the dishes she had prepared, a sense of pride in her voice. "I thought I'd make something simple tonight, spaghetti with homemade sauce and a side of roasted vegetables." Evie stepped closer, peering over her shoulder at the simmering sauce. "That smells amazing, Kaori. You've really outdone yourself." Valel, noticing Evie's arrival, gave her a polite nod. "Good evening, Mom." "Evening, Valel. What's this?" Evie asked as she noticed him stirring the pasta. "Are you the official pasta chef tonight?" Valel gave a small nod, a faint smile touching his lips. "I thought I'd help." "Everyone's been pitching in. Sora's just taking a break," Kaori added, with a teasing glance at her brother. Evie chuckled as she looked over at Sora, still lounging by the counter. "Well, that's good to hear." She glanced back at Kari, admiring her cooking skills. "You've really been taking the lead lately, haven't you?" Evie said, a touch of warmth in her voice. "I'm proud of you." Kaori's cheeks warmed a bit, but she smiled. "Thanks, Mom. I just wanted to make sure everyone had something good to eat." Evie's eyes softened as she looked around at the kids, each in their own little world, but still working together in their own way. "Well, it looks like you've all got things under control. I'm just happy I can come home and enjoy it." Corey finished plating the food and brought it to the table, while Viridia finished setting everything up. The kitchen was filled with a comfortable, almost peaceful energy as they all gathered around to enjoy the meal. Sora finally stood up, stretching dramatically. All right, I'll help carry the stuff to the table. It's not like I haven't been busy, right?" Evie gave him an exaggerated look of disbelief. "Uh-huh, sure. You've been very helpful." The table filled with laughter as they sat down to enjoy dinner, the hum of casual conversation filling the air. Even though Jing wasn't there, the atmosphere still felt like home, warm, loving, and full of life. The next morning arrived with the scent of something sweet, baking in the oven, and the soft hum of a quiet household already in motion. Sunlight spilled into the dining room, casting warm streaks across the breakfast table where the kids sat, still a little groggy but clearly trying to mask their excitement. Jing hadn't returned yet, but no one seemed overly concerned. It wasn't unusual for him to be gone overnight on a job. His message had been clear enough. He'd be back soon, and they were in good hands until then. Evie, casually sipping her tea and dressed in something far too relaxed for a workday, gave them a knowing smile. "I'm taking today off," she said, setting her mug down with a soft clink. "We're going to visit Effi." Kaori's eyes lit up instantly, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "Really? Effi's workshop?" Viridia leaned forward, clearly interested. "Perfect timing. My practice sword's starting to lose its balance and my regular one needs a new wrap. The grip's practically slick when I train." Sora let out a low whistle. "Last time we went, she gave me that kinetic ring. I still can't figure out how she got it to store bursts of energy like that." Valel, calmer than the others but no less intrigued, looked up from his plate. "Do you think she'll show us something new?" Evie chuckled as she stood and stretched. "She might not know we're coming, but she'll be happy. Probably. Depends on how much of her stuff you all break." "Kaori's the only one who breaks things," Sora said with a smirk. Kaori turned red. "That was one time and it was delicate. She said so." Evie laughed, the kind that filled the room and warmed the walls, then added with a wink, "Get ready. We'll leave after breakfast." The path to Effi's workshop wound through the outskirts of the city, nestled between the wooded trails and old stonework roads that led into the hills. As the hover car Evie borrowed, came to a soft stop outside the tall, ivy-covered building. The scent of warm metal, old enchantments, and cherry wood drifted through the air. Effi's workshop looked more like a two-story industrial greenhouse than anything else. Glass-paned ceilings, reinforced walls, and half a dozen vents puffing out soft curls of arcane steam. A few glowing sigils flickered lazily along the perimeter. As the group stepped out of the car, the front door slammed open with a metallic clank. "Kaori! Viridia! Sora! Valel!" Effi's voice rang out loud and delighted, followed by the sound of tools clattering onto a metal tray as she practically launched out the front door, apron still on and streaks of soot across her cheek. She skidded to a stop halfway down the path, pulled her goggles up to her forehead, and grinned like a kid in a candy shop. "You all better not have grown without telling me again." Kaori laughed and waved. "Hi, Effi." "Look at you. Taller, smugger. Sora, you better not be taller than Jing. That'll ruin his whole week." She pointed at him, then caught Valel trying to hang back behind the others. "And you're not allowed to be taller than me, that's cheating." Valel blinked. "I think I already was." Effi clutched her heart dramatically. Betrayal. Viridia smirked and held up the worn leather-wrapped hilt of her sword. "Effi, think you can fix these up?" Effi's eyes lit up instantly. "Ooh, yes, come on in, all of you. I'll put on music, chase off the dust sprites, and make you tea that might actually be edible this time." Evie, who had just stepped out of the driver's side, gave a wave as she strolled up behind them. "And that's the warmest welcome I've had all week." Effi turned, her smile widening even more. "Evie, you didn't warn me you were coming. I would have cleaned up." Evie crossed her arms, her expression playful. "You say that every time, and it's never true." "Lies! I totally shoved everything off one of the tables last time," Effi said, gesturing dramatically toward the workshop. "You shoved it onto another table," Evie countered. Effi just grinned and waved them all inside. Details. Inside, the workshop was exactly as they remembered. Part laboratory, part art studio, part chaotic home. Enchanted tools floated in neat formations above workbenches. Strange glowing materials were stacked in crates by the far wall, and the faint hum of energy and mana danced through the air like a heartbeat. Effi clapped her hands and turned to the kids. "All right, who wants to show me what's broken, what's busted, and what's just plain outdated?" Effi wasted no time directing the flow of activity like a conductor with a workshop full of instruments. "Viridia, bench by the window," she called, already grabbing tools. "We'll rewrap both hilts and check the weight balance. Kaori, I want you over here. You've got steady hands. Help me sort these enchantment threads by charge level. Sora, don't touch anything glowing until I say so. Valel, come with me. I've got something I think you'll appreciate." With practiced chaos, the kids scattered into their roles. The workshop buzzed with motion, soft, magical pulses, the faint whir of enchanted grinders, and the occasional pop from a mana crystal reacting poorly to a breeze. Kaori stood at a long, marble-topped work table, carefully separating thin wires that glimmered with enchantment residue. Effi hovered nearby, inspecting them over Kaori's shoulder while occasionally tossing a comment across the room. Sora was digging through a crate of random mechanical parts, turning each item over like he was building a mental map. Valel, more reserved but clearly intrigued, followed Effi into a quieter corner of the workshop where ancient runes glowed faintly on old armor plating. Viridia remained at the bench by the window, her swords laid out in front of her. She watched the others for a moment, then adjusted the wrap on her regular sword's grip, testing how it felt in her palm. After a beat, she looked over her shoulder and asked, loud enough for the room to hear, "So, are we just never going to talk about what Jing actually does for work?" The motion in the room slowed, but didn't stop entirely. Kaori hesitated with a strand of thread. Sora sat up straighter. Valel looked over from the corner. Evie, now standing with a fresh cup of tea in hand, let out a low sigh. "You're back on that again? You dodged it yesterday," Viridia said, casually rotating her practice sword to check the balance. "And the day before." Kaori chimed in, a bit softer. "We just wonder, sometimes." Sora leaned over from his crate. "The coat, the gear, the mystery trips, It's suspicious. Valel nodded, and he never talks about it. Evie gave a familiar, evasive smile. That's because it's not really something you can sum up in a sentence. Effi, still examining a crystal-infused gear, didn't even look up. He gets materials for me sometimes, she said offhandedly. Rare stuff. Things I can't get through regular channels when a commission needs something exotic. That caught their attention. Like, illegal stuff? Sora asked. Effi grinned. No comment. Evie shook her head. He's good at getting into places most people can't. But what he actually does? Let's just say it's complicated. Kaori opened her mouth to press further, but Effi cut in, tossing down a screwdriver with a dramatic clatter. You want to know what Jing used to do? She asked, brushing soot from her apron. Let me tell you about the time we were in a desert village and let him deal with a bunch of lizards. Sora perked up. Lizards? Effi nodded gravely. Rowdy, market-wrecking desert lizards. Dog-sized, sticky feet, no sense of personal space. Jing hated them. Evie sighed, but her smile betrayed her amusement. You're really going to tell that story? Absolutely. Effi jumped up onto a stool like a storyteller before a campfire. Picture this. Evie and I are sitting on a bench in the village square. Bright day, sunny, not a care in the world, except for the absolute chaos of lizards overturning carts and stealing vegetables. They were stealing melons, Evie muttered. Exactly, melons. Anyway, I say, someone should do something. Evie says, you mean we should do something? And I say, oh no, I'm a craftswoman, not a lizard wrangler. The kids chuckled, settling in to listen. So, Effi continued, we decide to wait for Jing. He shows up, sees the mess, and of course we guilt him into handling it. Told him it was perfect for someone with combat skills. Kaori smiled. Let me guess, he did it anyway? Oh, with grumbling, Effi said, eyes twinkling. He asked what he'd get out of it, and I told him I'd make him a shiny new dagger or a pocket flamethrower. Sora laughed. You would offer a flamethrower. Evie added, and I promised to heal whatever scratches he got. It was a fair deal. So did he take care of them? Viridia asked, raising a brow. Effi snorted. He did, with flair. Flipped over carts, slid under stalls, tackled one right into a fountain. Village loved him for it. Valel looked genuinely curious. And he enjoyed it? Evie and Effi exchanged a look. He complained the whole time, Evie said. But he was smiling by the end, Effi added. He always does when he gets to show off. The story faded into laughter and fond smiles. Viridia leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, but her expression had softened. I still want a real answer one day. Evie grinned, sipping her tea. Then ask him. Just be ready for him to turn it into a riddle. Effi raised her mug. In the meantime, more swords, less suspicion, yes? Sora chuckled. Fair enough. The sun had dipped low into the horizon by the time they made their way back home, casting a warm golden glow across the neighborhood. The evening breeze whispered through the trees as the kids climbed out of the car, their steps a little slower now after a full day of excitement and mystery. Their minds were still occupied by Effi's stories and their unanswered questions about Jing's job. As they reached the front door, the familiar scent of something savory and delicious wafted out to greet them. A low rumble from their stomachs reminded them that, despite the adventure-filled day, they hadn't forgotten their appetites. Jing was already home. Smells great, Sora murmured as he pushed open the door. Inside, the warmth of the house embraced them, the soft glow of lamps casting cozy pools of light throughout the living room. The table was set, and Jing was already standing by the stove, stirring a pot. His presence was a calm, steadying force in the room as always. You're just in time, Jing said, turning with a smile. Dinner's ready. The kids quickly sat down at the table, their chatter flowing easily as they got comfortable. Jing served them generous portions, his movements efficient and precise. But despite the food and the comfort of home, there was still that question lingering in the air about Jing's mysterious work. It didn't take long for Viridia to speak up. So, Jing, we've been talking, she started, her tone casual but her curiosity clear. And we still have no idea what your actual job is. Like, really. You've never told us. You're always so vague. Jing paused mid-serve, his eyes glinting with mischief. Oh? Have you now? He asked, his voice light and teasing, though the smile on his face didn't quite reach his eyes. And what have you come up with? Well, Sora began, leaning forward a bit. We were thinking, maybe you handle dangerous monsters, right? Like creatures that no one else can deal with? Kaori quickly followed, her voice more thoughtful. Or maybe you're a bounty hunter? Someone who tracks down and captures dangerous beings for a reward? Valel, ever calm, added his own theory. Perhaps you're some kind of protector. Maybe you handle high-risk situations for important people? Viridia grinned. Or maybe you're just a mercenary. I mean, you've got the skills for it. Jing chuckled, folding his arms as he leaned back in his chair. Interesting guesses. But none of you are quite there yet. I'll tell you what, though. How about a challenge? The kids perked up, all of them sensing something was about to happen. If you can solve this riddle, Jing said, a teasing glint in his eyes, I'll tell you exactly what I do. The kids exchanged curious glances, unsure of what was coming. Jing grinned wider as he prepared to present his riddle. I can be a protector or a predator. I may be tamed or I may escape. When I strike, it's swift and no one sees the blow until it's too late. I live in the shadows, but I'm never alone. What am I? The room fell quiet, the words of the riddle swirling around them as they tried to piece together the meaning. The mystery of Jing's job had deepened, and now they had a challenge ahead of them to unlock the answer. The riddle still hung in the air like a persistent puzzle. The kids sat in silence for a moment as they thought, each of them trying to untangle the strange clues Jing had left them with. I'm telling you, it has to be something to do with a monster, Viridia muttered, twirling a fork absent-mindedly. The predator and protector thing sounds like something with dual roles. Kaori shook her head slightly, still uncertain. But a monster's too obvious, don't you think? What if it's a person, someone who moves in and out of danger, living in the shadows, someone that only a few people know about, someone who does jobs no one else can handle? Sora leaned back, rubbing the back of his neck. I don't know. It could be someone like a secret agent or a bounty hunter. You know, working under the radar but still part of a bigger organization. Valel, ever the observer, quietly added, the strike without a blow part could be a clue. A lone operator, someone who works in secrecy but not for the common good. They might even operate outside the law. The conversation had begun to repeat itself, each idea bouncing off the last, but none of them getting closer to the truth. Jing, on the other hand, simply took small bites of his dinner, never saying a word to help them along. He watched them quietly, a slight smile on his face as they racked their brains. Effi, sensing the growing frustration, chimed in to change the subject before things got too intense. So, how was Effi's workshop today? I heard you all managed to break something this time. Kaori's cheeks flushed, but she quickly regained her composure. No, it wasn't like that. Viridia's sword just needed some work. Viridia smirked. Hey, you weren't exactly being gentle with those tools either, Kaori. Effi nearly had a heart attack when you dropped that enchanted hammer. Effi chuckled, taking a sip of her drink. I'm glad to hear you're all still keeping Effi on her toes. That workshop of hers is chaos in the best way. The kids went back and forth about the workshop, talking about Effi's eccentricities, the glowing tools that floated midair, and how they all ended up running after the dust sprites that kept trying to sabotage her projects. Jing remained quiet during the conversation, only occasionally adding a small comment, but he never veered back toward the riddle. It was starting to get late, the dinner winding down, and the kids were still no closer to solving Jing's riddle. They were exhausted, but their minds were restless, still turning over the puzzle as they ate. After the meal, they all moved to the living room, settling in for a quiet evening. Jing finally spoke, his voice casual as he leaned back in his chair. You'll figure it out eventually. I trust you. Sora groaned in frustration. You're not going to tell us, are you? Jing smiled and shrugged. I'm not one to spoil the fun, just keep thinking. Evie, seeing how worn out the kids were from the riddle, stepped in to shift the mood. All right, enough of this riddle talk for now. How about we watch something together? I think we all need a little break from mystery solving. Sounds good to me, Kaori sighed, her mind still buzzing but grateful for the distraction. Yeah, I need a break from trying to decode Jing's life, Viridia added, her shoulders slumping in mock defeat. The night carried on with quiet chatter and the flicker of a screen lighting up the room, but the riddle still lingered in the back of their minds, like a loose thread they couldn't stop tugging at. It was clear that no matter how much they tried to forget it, the question of Jing's true job would remain unanswered. For now.